So, last couple of days, there have been some cat fighting going on among female members of Congress. Yes, that today is considered sexist to say things like that. But let's be aware here, it was not necessarily men who coined the term cat fighting. Women use it more often than men. And of course, as you will see here in a few minutes, um, with this particular incident, online incident that went on between, well, I'll just go ahead and get started on this. Screen share here. We'll go over it. Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne Conway was the one who used the term, and there's often women who use the term talking about arguments between women. And women hold grudges. This is a known fact. Women agree, and they don't quite understand men who, when men among friends, when they get into arguments, typically it blows over and all is well under normal circumstances. Well, with women, it's just not that easy. So, where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is what we have here is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a perfect example of what happens when society teaches young women to hate the patriarchy. And there is going to be a remedy for that. So this article is by Tyler O'Neill. It was posted on July the 10th, 2019. So Cortez, and I wonder, is that her maiden name? In other words, where did that name come from? Did it come from her father? That's an interesting question. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I wonder if I can look this up and find out. Okay. I don't. Well, I can't figure out why. Okay, here we go. I still don't know what her dad's last name was. I guess his name was Sergio Ocasio. All right, so was given her dad's name. All right, going back to her, patriarchy has no gender. On Tuesday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat, New York, declared patriarchy has no gender. Now, that's delusion. The definition of delusion, well, we'll look that up too. Definition. an idiosyncratic belief or impression that is firmly maintained in spite of being contradicted by what is generally accepted as reality or rational argument, typically a symptom of mental disorder. So what we have here, folks, is we have a lot of mentally ill people serving as members of Congress today. So I can get rid of this. And she's one of them. This statement, absurd on its face, as the writer of this article correctly maintains, makes some sense in the right context. However, I don't know what in the world he meant by that. In what context? Patriarch is by nature a gender. You only have two genders, male and female. However, Ocasio-Cortez was accusing President Donald Trump's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, of sexism over her use of the term catfight. Conway had mocked a dispute between Ocasio and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Ocasio and three other Democrat freshman lawmakers disagreed with Pelosi over a border spending bill, and spat between Ocasio and Pelosi continues to heat up. Conway mocked the spat was a major meow moment and a huge catfight. Catfight is the sexist term Republicans use when two adult women happen to disagree with each other. Ocasio tweeted, "We all know that it is the most commonly used among women." Now, I'm not going to dig too far down in that cesspool. So let's go look up the definition of the word patriarchy. A system of society or government in which the father or eldest male is head of the family and descent is traced through the male line. A system or society of government in which men hold power and women are largely excluded from it. A society or community organized on patriarchal lines. All right. Now, what I would like to do is go to the Bible, and I'm going to show you something. All right, I can't spell very well. Now, Matthew 19 and verse 28. The name is not Jesus, it's Yehoshua. And verse 27, then answered Peter and said unto him, behold, we have forsaken everything and followed you. What shall we have thereof? What's going to be our reward? He's asking. And Yehoshua, not Jesus, said unto them, verily I say unto you, that you which have followed me in the restoration, the regeneration, restoration of what? The kingdom of David. Well, the kingdom of David, guess what? Was a patriarchy, as defined by what we just read. Right? When the Son of Man shall sit, son is a gender, and man is also a gender, shall sit on the throne of his glory. And you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging 12 tribes of Israel. Now, I have a question for everyone. Which one of the apostles was a woman? zero. In other words, this kingdom that's going to be in Jerusalem is the definition of a patriarchy. That's right, folks. Now, I want to show you in Isaiah 3, terrible things happened to Israel for disobedience. And particularly Judah and Jerusalem. Verse 1, it says, "For behold, Jehovah of hosts takes away Jerusalem and from Judah the stay of the staff and the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water." How did he do this? Well, he left and allowed Babylon to take Jerusalem. Then it happened again with Rome, who became the second Babylon. So it says, "The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, the prudent and the ancient, the captain of 50, the honorable man and the counselor, and the cunning artificer, and the eloquent orator," which I am not. "And I will give children to be their princes." In other words, people that have childish minds to be their leaders. And look what we have going on here in the United States. But not only the United States, all of Western civilization, this is happening. "And little babies shall rule over them." This is exactly what Alexandria Ocasio is. "And the people shall be oppressed, every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. The shall behave proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable." But see, this was going on in Judah and Jerusalem. This exactly what Isaiah 3 was all about, was it not? So why is it happening to Rome, aka Western civilization? I will get to that in a minute. "When a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, saying, You have clothing, be you our ruler, and let this ruin be under your hand." In other words, to be a nobody of any sound mind wants to be a leader, because it is an age of ruin for, in those days, Judah and Jerusalem, but today, Western civilization, aka Rome. "In that day shall he swear, saying, I will not be a healer, for in my house is neither bread nor clothing. Do not make me a ruler of the people." This just reiterates what I'm saying, that nobody of sound mind will want to be a congressman, senator, president of the United States, etc. Nobody of sound mind. "For Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against Jehovah, to provoke the eyes of his glory." Or maybe to poke the eyes of his glory. Well, this is exactly what's going on. What happened in ancient Judah and Jerusalem is now happening again in Western civilization, where women, little women who have not even lived long enough to even be called an adult, are poking the eye of the patriarchy. Our Father in heaven himself, he is the patriarchy. So when people poke at the patriarchy, it's not against mere mortal men that they're poking at. It is our Father in heaven himself. The show of their countenance does witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom, and they do not hide it. Well, just like it happened in Judah and Jerusalem, it is happening to Western civilization and Rome. Take a look around you. Isn't my argument valid? Isn't it true? Wouldn't you agree? Your own eyes are witnesses to the fact. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Say you to the righteous, it will be well with them, for they will eat the fruit of their doings. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with them, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. You're going to get what you're asking for, is what he's saying. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Those that lead the people cause them to err and destroy the way of your paths. So as we see, the people who led the people in the ancient days of Judah and Jerusalem were women and children. Children were their oppressors, just like today. For every thing that a child does not like, child will call, DSS, try to have their parents and their grandparents locked up over a made-up story. This is how the government operates. This is how the government operated in ancient Judah and Jerusalem, and it is how the government operates today in Western civilization, aka Rome. Why do I keep saying it over and over? I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that, folks. Jehovah stands up to judge. He stands up to judge the people. What he's saying is he's not going to sit here and tolerate it. He's going to stand up and judge. He's going to stand up and judge the people. Well, he stood up to judge Judah and Jerusalem, did he not? When he sent them into captivity? Does Western civilization, aka Rome, honestly think that they're going to get away with it? Jehovah will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof, because they have eaten up the vineyard and spoiled the poor. And the spoil of the poor is in their houses. They have confiscated that which once belonged to the poor. Well, that happened in Judah and Jerusalem, and it is happening right now in Western civilization, aka Rome. What do you mean that you beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, says Jehovah of hosts? Well, isn't this what Western civilization does? Lock up the poor who have no means to defend themselves in the court of law, and yet the elitists, the top people, will use the services of what appears to be now an FBI plant who takes underage girls and uses them as blackmail against all the other politicians. Yes, you know who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. But this is not just the United States. This is in Europe too. The whole of Western civilization. Now, this is where this is going to get uncomfortable for some people. But the truth is the truth. Just as it happened in Judah and Jerusalem in the old days, it's happening today. Moreover, Jehovah says, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, yes, They were back then, just like they are in Western civilization today. And walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet, and much, much worse, I might add. And if the young women of Western civilization are doing far worse than the women of Judah and Jerusalem did, the young women, do they think that their fate is going to be any different? Therefore, Jehovah will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Jehovah will discover their secret parts. In that day, Jehovah will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet and their calls and their round tires like the moon. That's necklaces with the moon on it or other heavenly bodies. Isn't that what the young women do today? Of course. The chains and the bracelets and the mufflers and the bonnets and the ornaments of the leg and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings, the rings and the nose jewelry, the changeable suits of apparel and the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins, the glasses and the fine linens and the hoods and the veils. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be a stink. And instead of a girdle or a corset, a rip. And instead of a well-set, beautiful hair, baldness. And instead of the, once again, girdle, a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. And your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty men in the war. And her gates, that was Judah and Jerusalem back then, shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit on the ground. That happened, folks. Every bit of this happened to Judah and Jerusalem. So why is Western civilization doing the same thing when they know the outcome is going to be the same for them? Now, I noticed something about Isaiah 4. Isaiah 4 was a continuation of Isaiah 3. And I personally, and some others that I know, have misread it. But I'm going to set the record straight on Isaiah 4. And part of the misreading was, it should not be, this should all be the end of Isaiah 3. And this, a remnant of Zion, should be between verse 1 and verse 2. So, where it says, in that day, 7 women will take a hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. It is because of the humiliation that Jehovah is what did to the women of Judah and Jerusalem from verses 1 through 26. Because they hated the patriarchy. That's what you have when women rule over men. That is hatred of the patriarchy. Because they hated the patriarchy, Jehovah went and turned their world upside down and forced the women, the daughters of Zion, into this situation. In that day, 7 women shall take a hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. He forced the hard way a change of heart upon the women of Judah and Jerusalem. Is this what's going to happen to the women of Western civilization? Well, of course it is. And even more. Let's go to Revelation 18. Starting in verse 1, and after all these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lit with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, has become the habitation of devils. Babylon the great being Rome, the city of Rome, and the entirety of Western civilization, folks. It has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And isn't it true today? For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people. That's not a figure of speech, folks. Do not get the wrong idea here. This is not a figure of speech. This is speaking of the restoration. This is what's written here. Right here in verse 28 of Matthew 19. And Yehoshua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, those who have followed me in the regeneration or the restoration, when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of glory, and you shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of the church. Is that what it says? No. Israel. So the regeneration is the reformation and the restoration of the kingdom in Jerusalem. So all the people of Israel are going to, great and small, are going to be taken out of Western civilization, that you be not partakers of her sin, and brought back to the Holy Land, and that you receive not of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and Jehovah has remembered her iniquities. Reward her just as, oh yes, folks, here it is. What did Rome do to Jerusalem? Well, now it's going to be done to Rome. Everything that Rome did to Jerusalem must be done to Rome. And then it says, and double it unto her, double according to their work, unto her works. In the cup in which she has filled, fill to her double. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give to her. For she said in her heart, says in her heart, I sit as a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall all her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, famine, and she'll be utterly burned with fire. For strong is Jehovah Elohim that judges her. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like Isaiah 3 and 4, does it not? So if Babylon is going to be rewarded double, then that means verse 1 of Isaiah 14, in that day 14 women will take a hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by your name to take away our reproach. You see. Now, concerning the daughters of Zion, this is where Isaiah 4 should start. This Isaiah 4 and verse 1 should be the ending of Isaiah 3, and Isaiah 4 should start in verse 2. There's coming a day when the branch of Jehovah, that's the branch of Jesse, will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for all those who escape from Israel. So I'm going to cover 2 points here. You see, when Israel escapes from Western civilization, as it is written in Revelation 18, It's not going to be a situation where there is one man to 7 women. I have read that often, and I was saying to myself, well, that would mean that a whole bunch of Israeli men are going to have to die. Well, that does not square with the promise of salvation, does it? No, it does not. Because verse 1 of Isaiah 4 belongs in Isaiah 3. It is about the punishment on the daughters of Zion. That there was, all these men were killed, and they were only left with one man, 7 women. Now, if the daughter of Babylon is going to be rewarded double, that means the women, by the time all the war is over, 14 women to 1 man. That is how many dead men there are going to be. Let that sink in for a little bit. And the Gentile women will no longer be ruling over the men, yelling sexist, misogynist, poking the eye of our Father in heaven, the greatest patriarch of them all. And it will come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remains in Jerusalem shall be called holy, and everyone that is written among the living in the book of life will be in Jerusalem. And Jehovah shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. Burns up everything in there that doesn't belong, or just throws it out. And Jehovah will create upon every dwelling place, and he will place over every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies, her houses and everything, a cloud of smoke by day, in other words, a cloud of shade by day from the sun, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, for upon all the glory shall be a defense. On the whole of Jerusalem shall be a defense from the elements. And there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime. That's what he's describing, the same as in the previous verse. And from the heat and from the and for a place of refuge and for a covert from storm and from rain. So I hope that this video has been helpful to explain the confusion over Isaiah 4 and verse 1 and where it really belongs. If Israel is going to be saved in the land, I need to go to one scripture just to prove my point. I know there are some people out there who claim that in the last days 2/3 of all Israel are going to be killed. No, that already happened, folks. But what I want to do is to go to a scripture that makes my point here. In one day. I hope I can find it. Shall a nation be born in one day? Here is Isaiah 66. Now, in many of my previous videos, I upon reading Isaiah 60, I had assumed that all of Israel were going to be loaded up on airliners as we know it today, and it would take probably up to a year to bring them all in. But once I read 2 Kings 2 about the aircrafts of Israel, it says the horses and the chariot of Israel. Okay, now if you go and strong concordance, you will see that it is indeed an aircraft of sorts, but driven by angelic beings. So in that context, what I want to do is go to Isaiah 66, and I've went over this first section about what's going to happen to the Gentiles from verse 1 through 6, okay? And how Jehovah is going to shout for his people, right here in verse 5 and 6. Then this is mentioned. Before she travailed, that would be Zion, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Is that talking about the Messiah? We'll continue and you will see what this is talking about. No, it's not talking about Messiah. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Here we go. This is the key right here. One day. Or shall a nation be brought forth at once? What he's saying is, so as soon as Zion travailed, here comes all her children in one day. In one day. Shall I bring to the birth, and shall I not cause to bring forth, saith Jehovah? And I shall cause to bring forth. Shall I cause to bring forth and then shut the womb, saith Jehovah? Which would be, and well, that's just crazy. Of course it's crazy. He'd never do such a thing. Rejoice you with Jerusalem, be glad with her, all you that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all you that mourn for her. So, actually, yes. So this is right here, verse 3 and verse 4 is talking about the idolatry on the earth. Okay, and when you read down here, Jehovah's judgment against the wicked, verse 15, for behold, Jehovah is going to come with fire and with his chariots. What's those chariots for? To bring back all Israel to Jerusalem, not to heaven, no, to Jerusalem in one day. I know what Christianity thinks, but Christianity is wrong in this regard. They think the church is going to be raptured up to heaven while the wrath of Jehovah burns the entire earth. Wrong. The people of Israel are going to be loaded up on chariots, ships, flying chariots, you know, like the one that Eliyahu the prophet was transported on, and is going to be transported in one day to Zion. This chapter says so. But this chariot's like a whirlwind. These chariots are going to cause whirlwinds, tempest, movement of air. They're very fast to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by sword will Jehovah judge all flesh, and the slain of Jehovah shall be many. And there is your reason, folks, that instead of 7 women to 1 man, there will be 14 women to 1 man. And we shall see who pokes the eye of the patriarchy. And the 2 witnesses, verse 18 through 21, or verse 19, will be sent back to these nations, Tarshish, Pul, Lud, the warrior nations, and in other translations it says Meshech, Tubal, and Rosh being Russia, and to Greece, and to the coastlands afar off, that would be Europe, Rome, Western civilization. And those 2 witnesses will declare his glory among the Gentiles. How will they do that? Well, three and a half years of no rain, every sort of plague. Judgment is going to come upon those who stick their eye or stick their finger in the eye of the patriarchy. Western civilization is not better than Judah and Jerusalem. If Judah and Jerusalem could not escape judgment, how in the world is Western civilization going to escape it? So while these people are doing these things, every evil that their imagination can come up with, the rest of us need to be ready to come to Zion. We want to be among those who rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad for her. And all you that love her, rejoice with her, all you that mourn for her. We want to be of that group, not to be of those who love the world. We want to be those that love Jerusalem. Because to hate Jerusalem is by default loving the world. And you know how it's written, love not the world, right? Love not the world. This is 1 John 2:15. Neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. What is the opposite of loving the world? Loving Jerusalem and mourning for Jerusalem. Verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, isn't it so much so today in Western civilization, is not of the Father, but is of the world, and the world is going to pass away, yes, with a great noise, and the lust thereof. But he that does the will of the Father abides forever. Now, James 2, verse 5. Listen, my beloved brethren, hasn't Jehovah, chosen the poor of this world, the rejected of this world, the despised of this world, to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom. Oh, what kingdom? The one in Jerusalem. If you love the kingdom in Rome, you are of this world. Or if you think that Washington, D.C. is going to save you, you are of this world. Or if you think that the kingdom is going to be in Salt Lake City, you are of this world. Rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom, which he promised to those who love him. Well, verse 10 of Isaiah 66, rejoice with Jerusalem, and be glad for her, all you that love her. Rejoice for her with her, for joy with her, and all you that mourn for her, that previously mourned for Jerusalem. That is the mindset you should have. You know what's going to happen to Western civilization now if you did not know before. So don't love the world and don't hate the patriarchy.